Thank you for joining me for another video. If you remember last week, we finished up with Genesis chapter 5, which was just a super exciting genealogy, if you're into that sort of thing. Also, we talked a little bit about the Nephilim, sort of their backstory, where they came from, what they were all about, that sort of thing. That is also going to be the topic of today's video as well. The Nephilim, because we are leading up to the flood at this point, and the Nephilim actually play a role in the flood. So the Nephilim, for those of you who maybe need a quick reminder, the Nephilim are what Hebrews, Jews, Israelites, what we call them. The Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Hittites, even as far away as the Ionian Greeks, also had terms for them. The Greeks, by the way, called them Titans. These are, it appears to be the same people as the Anunnaki, as the biblical Anakim, as the biblical Rephaim, and a number of other names that different cultures remembered them by. These are just people. Okay, we discussed this before. I'm actually going to have to restate that again this week, because I'm going to use a very key phrase, a very simple phrase that is religiously loaded this week. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. We are in chapter 6. We're going to read the very first 4 verses of it. So it opens up with Wayhi ki hehel hadam larov al padnei adama uvanot yuldu lahem. Tells us that it happened. Okay, so it doesn't say it happened, it says it was, right? Wayhi means and it was. Okay, but I'm translating it as and it happened because it's telling the story here. It's giving us an and it happened that as man began to get bigger, to increase, to expand, to spread out, to move around, maybe, across the face of the earth, and others were born to them. That's kind of an incomplete thought. And the sons, or the children of the gods, yes, I said that, we'll talk about that in just a minute, saw the daughters of men, or men, that they were beautiful, they were pretty, they were, literally means that they were good, these ladies. وَيِقْهُ لَهِمْ نَشِّمْ مِنْ كَلَ أَشَرٍ بَحَرُّ, that they took from them as a wife from whichever ones they chose. Okay, we're also going to briefly talk about that. And I lost my spot. There we go. وَيُمَرْ Hashem lo yadon ruchi v'adam la'olam. And Hashem said, my spirit will not deal with man forever. Bashagamhu, because he's Bashagamhu vasar, because he's flesh. He's how does this version translate? He's since he's but flesh. He's just flesh. My kids are probably laughing if they're watching this because I said but flesh, but that's okay. وَهَيُّ يَمَوْ مَا وَعِسْرِمْ شَنَا, and their days will be 120 years. Right, and there's a lot of commentary about that is that referring to the lifespan of humanity being shortened. That's for those who take the literal meaning of the genealogy, that lifespans were much, much longer back then. I have an issue with that because, like, what changed? Okay, so you had a flood, but, like, other than that, what changed? I understand it to mean in 120 years. Okay, so that's when I'm going to send the flood. And there are a lot of other people, not that this validates my opinion, but there are a lot of people who agree with me on that. Or rather, I should say, I agree with them, because I sort of adopted that myself. The days will be... and then it tells us Nephilim hayu ba'aretz bayamim hahem, that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. V'gam acharei chen asher yavou v'nei ha'elohim el banot ha'adam, and also afterward when the children of the gods, the sons of the gods, would come to the daughters of man. It is actually talking about sex. It's being vulgar here. The text is actually being vulgar. It's very rare that that the text of the Torah is vulgar. It is being vulgar here. When it tells us that these children of the gods, they came to the daughters of mankind, and it tells us that they came to them, which is vulgar. That's probably as close to as vulgar as the Torah is going to get, and I'm not going to expound on that. And I apologize about all the noise. وَيَلْدُوا لَهُمْ هَمَّا هَجِبُرِّيمَ asher me'olam anshei Hashem, and they bore to them, they gave birth to their offspring, to the offspring of these children of the gods. Hemma hagiborim asher me'olam, that these were the giborim, the heroes of old, right? The Anshei Hashem, literally the men of renown. I've also heard translations that say that they were men of devastation. Very interesting stuff. Anshei Hashem literally means men of the name. There is also a mystical interpretation of that means that they, by using God's name, they had the ability to do magic and all sorts of stuff like that. No, nonsense. There's no such thing as magic. Anyone who is old enough to... Well, those dogs are going crazy. And they're not my dogs. I don't know whose they are. But those people who are old enough to know that the magician at your birthday party is not actually summoning dark arts or light arts, whatever the case may be, to do that card trick, or to do that sleight of hand. Those of us who understand that are going to have a hard time saying, yes, there is magic in the world, unless we happen to be really into fantasy books, or fantasy television shows or movies, that sort of thing. And we've watched them so much that we've convinced ourselves that it's real. Okay, so I don't know why I closed my book, because I will be jumping back and forth to it. So the text uses really interesting term here to refer to these Nephilim. Okay, it is referring to the Nephilim. So it says, it calls them Bnei Ha-Elohim. Now, one possible interpretation of that is the sons of God. If that's the case, okay, well then we have another issue, because God doesn't actually have physical children, right? We are if we jump into Exodus, believe it's in chapter 2, don't quote me on that though, but I believe it's in chapter 2. God tells Moses, hey, I want you to go to Pharaoh, and I want you to say to him, Israel is my firstborn son. And if you're not going to let my firstborn son go, you're really not going to like what I'm going to do to yours. Right? Go back and read it. It's a wonderful story for Israel. Not so great for the Egyptians. So we learn that when God, has a son, it's not literal. Because God, again, has no physical body. There's no physicality to him. And because of that, he does not have physical offspring like we do. He has spiritual children. Okay, Israel is, spiritually speaking, God's firstborn, right? So we get all the good stuff, and everybody else just kind of gets, their portion. Whatever their portion may be, everybody else just kind of gets it. Okay, nothing good, nothing bad. Just kind of everybody else gets their portion, right? So these are the Nephilim. These children of the gods, and I'm translating it that way because this takes place before the Torah was given. This takes place before I've forgotten the word when you worship, when you believe in and worship one God, but you monotheism. This is before monotheism. I had to break it down in the original from the root words. Wow, that's fantastic. That is wonderful. So monotheism, that's embarrassing. And on camera. Wonderful. This is what happens when you've got too many languages jumping around in your mind. You just sort of, start spouting out random stuff. And somehow it magically works. But only because you forgot the word for something. So this is before monotheism. This is before Israel existed. This is before Abraham existed. Okay? This is exactly, according to the Torah, 10 generations before Abraham. Okay, so this is a very, very, very long time ago. Let's place it, let's say, between 4 and 5,000 years ago, or so, on a Tuesday perhaps. Or perhaps not, I don't know. I got a 1 in 7 chance of getting it right? This is a very long time ago, so we can't really look at this passage as saying, these are the sons of God from a strictly monotheistic perspective, right? So we can be a little bit more flexible here because these people are not monotheists. And as it happens, all the other cultures around Israel in the ancient days who preserved this very same story, by the way, from Greece all the way to Iran, into Afghanistan and Pakistan. Some even say as far east as India. So we do see these sorts of things popping up in their mythologies as well, or in their religious traditions as well, because mythology makes it sound like I doubt it all, but there are kernels of truth, even though I disagree with the main premise of every religion but my own. There are little kernels of truth here and there, right? So from my perspective anyway. So, wow, that is an impressive engine, because that's way down at the end of the street. What was I even talking about? B'nai Elohim, yes, the sons of the gods. Makes perfect sense, because, remember, from last week's video, the sons of the gods, the Anakim, the Anunnaki, the Anunna, right? The Titans in Greek mythology. These are all children of the gods, except for the Titans. The Titans are a little bit different. They're kind of a class of god all to themselves. These are a lesser divinity than true gods in ancient mythology, right? So these are more like Hercules and Pythagoras as opposed to the Christian concept behind Jesus, right? He's not like a full-blown God like the Christian Jesus is, but he's like these people are like the sons of the gods in the same sense that Pythagoras the mathematician was. Okay, these are just human people. There's nothing abnormal about them, except of course for the fact that they originally lived and bred in, if I can say bred, you know, in reference to humans. Sounds slightly racist is the wrong word, but it's the only one I can think of. I can make one up though. Sounds off, you know, to talk about eugenics. That's the word. Sounds like eugenics, right? You're breeding humans. But these people, they bred, they you know, they had children, they lived for centuries in the mountains. So they grew accustomed to low oxygen content, they come down to a lower elevation, and they happen to be stronger, faster, better than ever was. Just like the $6 Million Man, only not quite so bionic, right? Because all that was happening was their oxygen that they were able to breathe now just suddenly got much more full. You know, the air that they were breathing was now just absolutely saturated with oxygen, which supercharged them, right? So what would be like a modern example of this? Well, me. So I moved to Florida in 2012, which is quite some time ago now. But I moved here from the high desert of New Mexico, right? We're talking, I lived, you know, just for reference, I lived at an elevation of over 1.5 kilometers, but not quite a mile. It was, let's say, 5,400 feet, roughly, okay? Give or take a couple hundred. Very high altitude. Well, very high for anyone living in Florida. You know, up there I was just normal, and I was used to just doing things, you know, just kind of having the same level of energy, you know, having the same stamina, having the same level of strength and everything that I had, you know, for my whole life, right? And then I moved here, where the elevation is less than 100 feet, right? And suddenly, everything changed. You know, so I'm being distracted by the vehicles. But suddenly I had more energy. I found that I was stronger. I found that I had better endurance, right? My stamina had increased. I found myself taking very shallow breaths for the first couple of months that I lived in Florida. Why? Because it was too much air. It was just too much for me. The only time when I would take a deep breath is, you know, if I needed a deep breath, like, you know, going underwater or whatever. And the effects are mostly wearing off now, because I'm not originally from New Mexico. You know, my ancestry is you know, not originally from that high up in the New Mexican desert, but I lived there long enough to become acclimated to it. Then when I came here, suddenly I'm Superman. Well, that's what's going on here with the Nephilim. They were able to move down to these lower areas, these lower altitudes, from originally in the Zagros Mountains in the area of Ararat, the Ararat Mountains, as the Torah puts it, Harre Ararat. Then worked their way down the Susiana Plain over by Shushan in Persia, Iran. Was Persia, now it's Iran. Name changes, it happens. And then they worked their ways down to the Sumerian coastal plain, which is now in Iraq, by the Persian Gulf. And I'm going to refer to the native peoples of that area as Sumerians, even though that's anachronistic. They are not Sumerians, they are whatever they were. But it was not Sumerians because Sumer did not exist yet, right? So, let me glance at my notes right quick and figure out where the heck I am in this. Okay, so now we look at the text of the Torah, and what's it telling us? Well, it tells us that these Nephilim, these supermen who are supercharged by being, super, they went down into the. Wow, that was loud. They went down into the coastal valley, coastal plain. That's the word. The coastal plain of what later became Sumer. And they were bigger, badder, and stronger than everybody else because these are supermen, right? These are basically the equivalent of, an entire tribe of me when I first moved to Florida. They had so much energy they didn't really know what to do with themselves. They were running laps around the neighborhood just, because they had so much energy or something, so they came down. They're bigger, better, and stronger than everybody else, and they have a completely different culture that they brought with them, completely different gods and or goddesses, completely different religious structure. Everything about them was completely different, and the Sumerians, the indigenous Sumerians, were like, "Oh yeah, man, you are more than welcome to come and live here with us, and become one with us, like join the tribe, sort of a thing." And they took advantage of that. They said, "Yeah, let's do that. That's wonderful. That's a great idea. Wonderful, fantastic." And then things didn't go so well for the indigenous Sumerians, because anytime you've got an entire tribe showing up, completely different culture, showing up and moving into the area, not assimilating at all, that causes a lot of tension, right? And oh yeah, by the way, these guys are heavier armed and they are stockier build, right? They're more robust. They are supermen. And from the perspective of these ancient Sumerians, or ancient pre-Sumerian, proto-Sumerians, there we go, that's what I'm going to call them. These proto-Sumerians, from their perspective, these are the children of the gods. See how I tied that in there? Wonderful. I'm good at that sometimes. So they easily could have overpowered the indigenous Proto-Sumerians. I like that word. I'm going to stick with that one. Proto-Sumerians, right? And they took for wives any women that they wanted. The text very plainly tells us that. One of the things that the Midrashim basically agree on is that they took these wives from whoever they chose, up to and including married women, and they would also lust after men. These were, at least according to one opinion, they would also lust after men. Okay, these were lawless times by every account. I'm not saying they were right or wrong. I'm not saying homosexuality is right or wrong, morally speaking. I'm not, again, this is before the Torah was given. But that is one tradition. And I feel that it's important to pass that tradition on. But what do you do if a woman or her husband doesn't want one of these Nephilim to marry his wife, or her, what if these Nephilim who come down, who say, oh yes, I want this girl, she's very pretty, I like the brown hair and the brown eyes and the brown skin and the brown, I don't know, man, like everything in the desert's brown, like sand, people, everything's brown except for hair. Hair is, can be black. Rocks, right? Even animals, brown. Everything's brown in the desert. I'll never understand that. It's just like, how did they all know to live there? Anyway, so what if one of the Nephilim wants to take a woman for a wife, but she doesn't want to? I'm very sorry, ma'am. The Nephilim are bigger, stronger, meaner than you. They're the sons of the gods. Did you not know that? Right? That's the sort of thing that happened. It was a very regular occurrence. In fact, the Torah actually tells us not only did it happen just this one time, no, but it also says at the end of the verse, and also after. At the end of what I read, at the end of verse 4, and also afterward, whenever the children of the gods would mate with these ordinary human people. That's just... Times were different, what can I say? Let me see where I am. So the Midrash tells us that they were called Nephilim because it comes from the word nafal, which means to fall. But it's used, the form that the word takes means that it's used to say that they caused others to fall. Meaning, women who were married are now being forced into adultery. This is also, these are very violent people, this Adamite group. Very violent from the perspective of the relatively peaceful Proto-Sumerians, right? And, as it just so happens, the children of the gods. So we have to do what they say, otherwise, God knows, they could kill us. I wish I had better news, That's just what the text is describing. But I don't want you to think that everything that they did was bad. The Nephilim certainly were not great people. That's not to say that all of the Adamite tribe was not good, because we know that Noah ish Tzaddik, was coming up soon, that Noah was a Tzaddik, he was a righteous man. The Torah even says he was perfect in his generations. So certainly not every single Adamite was a bad guy, but certainly there were enough to where, it's like in modern society, you have this, many Western nations today have a lot of immigrants coming in from different cultures, that's loud too, have immigrants coming in from different cultures that don't assimilate, they don't respect the local native culture, if you will. They don't really want to make that culture better, and so they end up causing trouble, right? In some countries, immigrants are responsible for the majority of crime. In America, Americans are responsible for the majority of the crime, because we deport our criminals who are illegally here. But in other countries, like in Sweden, right, all of Scandinavia that has issues with crime rising, but they also have a high number of immigrants coming in, Okay, well, that's because you have a very different culture trying to come into an already well-established culture that just doesn't care what its host culture says. And I realize that's not politically correct. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not blaming anything. What I'm doing is just pointing out the obvious that in some countries, yes, they are the ones committing the majority, want a part of the culture to conform to their own. Part of it also has to do with the fact that maybe they just don't understand the laws. I don't know. I don't know in every single case, and obviously I'm no legal expert. I'm just a humble random Jew from all over, but who currently resides in the Orlando, Florida area. Right? And so that's what's going on in the ancient times. You've got this culture that not every single one of them was bad. No, in fact, probably the majority of them were good. But it's those bad apples that sort of give the whole group a bad name, right? If I have 100 apples and one of them is poisoned, and you happen to eat that one, well, anyone who's watching might assume that the other 99 are poisoned as well. It's not the case, but you can't blame them for assuming the same thing. And that's exactly what was going on here, right? Get my glasses back on for a second. So yeah. Now, I don't want you to think that they were all bad and no good. Because it certainly does appear that as time went on, they blended really quite well with the Proto-Sumerians, right? They actually increased farmland, right? They dug from the Euphrates River, they dug canals out so that it increased the farmland, gave everybody access to more food. They established colonies and trading outposts, mostly to harvest, or to not harvest, the natural resources of the area, right? Petroleum products like bitumen, which, by the way, is going to come into play in the flood story. Metals for whatever they needed metals for, basic metals, copper, that sort of thing. Minerals from the desert, that sort of thing. They basically built a small empire, a small kingdom, right? And not only that, they also had trade networks with neighboring tribes, neighboring, let's call them proto-countries, because I don't really know that there were like full countries at the time. Right? Like nobody had a flag then, I assume. And we'll say that is the what makes a country. If you have a flag, you have a country, right? Ask Eddie Izzard in his Dressed to Kill stand-up comedy show. Fantastic comedy, hilarious. Don't watch it with your kids. Where was I going with all that? Oh yeah, so the Nephilim, yes, they were not so great people according. They also did good things for the region, and it actually brought that culture into a very good place, a very much better place. And that is horribly broken English, but that's all right. That being said, I'm done. That's all I got for now. We're also going to sort of introduce ourselves to Noah a little bit. Also, coming up in this flood narrative that we are going to go just to save time, but I may not. I don't know. I haven't quite decided yet. So we are going to talk about other traditions, other religious traditions from the ancient days, the Sumerians, the Akkadians. We're going to talk about their flood traditions, because it's all very clearly the same flood story, told by descendants of survivors of that flood. It's only been in recent years that people have, and by recent I mean the last, I don't know, let's say 200-300 years or so, that people have really sort of questioned it. So, that being said, I am done. I promise this time. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button. In YouTube, I love questions, I have answers. I can't always promise it's the right answer, but I will get the right answer, or as right an answer as we have, and get it back to you. And then if you have questions that you don't want to ask publicly, basically you don't want it to be known that you know, you were asking if you can do drugs on the weekends, you know, that sort of thing, you know, those type of questions, which has been asked. The best thing for you to do, if you want to ask those questions, but you want to remain kind of anonymous, to the world, obviously not to me, you don't want it known that you are asking, okay, so private message me on Facebook. I'll be glad to answer the question, and I may actually make it into a video. That being said, I'm done, I'm gone, so until next time, shalom. Cut.